Now let's go to sports version of Eddie Perfect, an all-rounder who was all over the A-League on the weekend and calling that great grand final. We're introducing, of course, Francis Leach, who's been giving us some analysis throughout the finals. Francis, good morning.
G'day, PK. How are you?
Good, thank you. Now, you're previewing the two best teams. It turned out that the very best team was way ahead of Sydney yesterday.
Yeah, Melbourne Victory's 3-0 result, it was emphatic, wasn't it? From the off, when Besart Berisha played the ball from the first second, he just ran at the Sydney defence and was immediately fouled. You got a sense that Melbourne Victory were determined to take it to Sydney from the get-go. And in the end, it finally broke on 33 minutes, and it had to be Berisha, who always scores on big occasions in grand finals. He got the opening goal.
Beautiful touch of his left boot just to drag that ball around and then fire.
And it took to 83 minutes before Barbarouses finally got the second goal to put the game on ice. And then Lee Broxham getting forward from right back to score a third so the party could really get started. But by then, Sydney were well and truly broken. They never fired a shot in this match. Graham Arnold had spoken a lot during the week about how they thought they had Victory's measure. In fact, he said just after they won the Premier's Plate that he would give Melbourne Victory no credit whatsoever for winning the Premier's Plate, which is the best at the end of the home and away season. He felt his team, if not for injuries, would have won it by 10 points.
Yeah.
Those comments were undoubtedly used by Kevin Muscat in the build-up to this game for them to prove a point, because Arnold continued on that theme right throughout the week, saying, oh, we feel we're the best team and we've got nothing to fear. Well, they were like bunnies in the headlights yesterday. It didn't work for them at all. And the injury to Jacques Fati, their defender, didn't help, and they had to reshuffle a little bit. And they never had any time or space on the ball. Mark Milligan in midfield for Melbourne Victory, the captain, just led that sort of suffocating approach to midfield play, and Victory cracked them. They broke them.
And sometimes you, in hindsight, you can always view these things, but sometimes the coach that says the most during the finals does so because maybe he thinks that the opposition might just have too many guns. So maybe Arnold, in hindsight, was making all those comments because he thought they needed a mental edge. He wasn't quite as certain of his team's best being good enough to beat Victory.
It certainly felt that way in the end. He'd be disappointed. I think he thought leading up to the final that they'd had shown enough form in that semi-final against Adelaide United that they did have a big game mentality. They scored 4 goals. They looked fantastic. They were exuberant on the ball. They had a young flyer, Christian Almoff, who was coming into his own and causing headaches for defences. But they were just terrible yesterday. They couldn't get on the ball for any length of time. The number of errors that they were forced into by Melbourne Victory pressing up on them was significant. They looked like a park football team on occasion, the way that they couldn't stick their passes. So it was a fantastic result for Kevin Muscat. Remember, Kevin Muscat, in his final days as a player, was basically marched out of the competition in disgrace. I mean, he was involved in an ugly incident against Melbourne Heart, as it was back then, and suffered a ban in his final game. He came back as an assistant under Ange Postecoglou. Many questioned his temperament and whether he had the smarts to be a good coach, but he's proven to be a great man manager. Hasn't lost his spark, as you can see there, as he gives the fourth official a bit of a spray. But this is huge vindication for him and the club that backed him. He's been there since day one as the captain of the inaugural team. He's stayed within the confines of Melbourne Victory. He understands the club. It's been built around him in many ways, and he's proved his mettle as a coach as well, which is a superb performance for Muscat.
What was it like being in that stadium? We discussed yesterday, last week, the big downside was thousands of people couldn't go because they had it in the smaller stadium, but it must have been quite some atmosphere in there. Yeah,
the noise, the way that it's built with those bubbles over the stands, when the first goal went in, it raised the roof in a way that almost blew the eardrums, and the fans who arrived early, the kids from the North Terrace getting involved. It was a perfect day in Melbourne too for it too. They got lucky with the weather, and that just added to the sort of sense of the festive atmosphere and the anticipation leading into kick-off. It is disappointing that it wasn't played in a bigger stadium, but I think next time the state government and the other football codes will all have to get around and come to a better deal to make sure that doesn't happen again. For Sydney FC, a frustrating season, as we said. They played so well for long periods. They've come a long way. Graham Arnold rejected that Sydney FC job about 3 years ago. Thought the club wasn't ready to do the sorts of things he would ask of it to become a better football club. They're in a much better place now. He was, once again, still provocative at the end when he got up on stage and waved his scarf around. But he was not the headline act on the stage, I can tell you that.
No, well, and indeed in your profession you have to plan for all the different things that might happen during a game. Maybe you get ready for the big moments. How did you call Frank Lowy falling off the stage?
Well, I saw it. It happened right in... we were literally front and centre in the commentary box for this, and I could just see him reach for the trophy and then go over. But from where I was sitting, I thought he'd seriously hurt himself. I thought he might have killed himself the way that he landed on his head. 84 years of age, and it was a heavy fall. Luckily, it was on the grass. That's all I can say. Because that was a serious fall, but extraordinary resilience. He was determined to get back up there and present the trophy, but it was wasn't a great moment. You could hear the entire crowd just sort of go into a bit of a hush, to horrified that maybe he'd been seriously hurt. But then he got back up. The only indignity was that grass stain on his head that makes him look like he's been playing for 90 minutes rather than presenting the trophy. But it was an amazing night. But that was not a moment that we'd ever want to see again.
It was a bit like a Jerry Maguire moment, wasn't it? Where the crowd was able to cheer at the end. Just finally, 10 years in with the A-League. Do you think expansion should come quickly, or what's the next step? Or should they just keep going and have a really good 10-10 comp?
There's a lot of talk in the media room yesterday about the possibility of expansion in the next 2 or 3 years, if they need to continue to grow the game. And that's certainly in the plan that the Football Federation Australia put forward for the next 20 years of the game. I think there will be expansion, but they'll have to be very careful about it because they've had failed franchises in the past in regional markets that haven't worked, North Queensland, and the Gold Coast remains a mystery to almost all sporting codes. So it's where they go, and do they put a third team in one of the bigger markets? So they've got to be very careful, but I think it's inevitable.
Yep. Okay. I'll watch that sport continue to grow. Thanks for all your analysis through the finals. We appreciate it.
Anytime.